In the village of Bethany there lived a family Jesus loved. There was Lazarus and his sisters Mary and Martha. They opened their home to Jesus. They shared meals and stories with him. Jesus loved them like family.
One day Lazarus became very ill. His sisters were worried. They knew Jesus loved their brother. They sent a message to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick."
When Jesus heard the message, he said,
"This sickness will not end in death. It is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it."
Jesus stayed where he was for 2 more days, despite the urgency of the message. He knew God had a plan. The disciples were confused and anxious. They knew Judea was dangerous for Jesus. The threat of violence loomed large.
"Rabbi, the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you are going back?" They questioned his decision.
"Are there not 12 hours of daylight?" Jesus replied, emphasizing the importance of his mission. "I am coming to you as the light of the world." He reassured them of his purpose and the divine timing.
Meanwhile, back in Bethany, Lazarus had died. The village was filled with sorrow. Mary and Martha were heartbroken. Their grief was profound and palpable. Their brother, their friend, was gone. The loss was deeply felt by all who knew him. The air was thick with mourning, and the sisters clung to each other for comfort, their tears flowing freely. Yet amidst the sorrow there was a glimmer of hope. They had sent for Jesus, believing in his power to heal and restore. The story was far from over. Jesus was on his way, and with him, the promise of a miracle that would change everything. When Jesus arrived in Bethany, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Many friends and relatives had come to comfort Mary and Martha. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she ran out to meet him.
"Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died."
"Your brother will rise again."
"I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day."
Then Mary came to Jesus. She fell at his feet, weeping.
"Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died."
When Jesus saw her weeping, and the others who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled.
"Where have you laid him?"
"Come and see, Lord," they replied.
Jesus wept. His heart was full of sorrow. He loved Lazarus and his sisters. He felt their pain. They came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone rolled across the entrance. The air was heavy with anticipation, and the crowd gathered around, whispering among themselves, wondering what would happen next.
"Take away the stone." The command was clear and unwavering, filled with authority and purpose.
"But Lord, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days."
The hesitation was palpable, as the reality of death and decay weighed heavily on their minds. Then Jesus said with a calm yet firm voice, breaking through their doubts and fears,
"Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?"
His words were a reminder of faith and the power of belief, urging them to trust in the miraculous. So they took away the stone. The crowd watched in silence, their hearts pounding, as the heavy stone was moved aside, revealing the dark entrance of the tomb. Then Jesus looked up and said, lifting his eyes to the heavens, a gesture of connection and gratitude,
"Father, I thank you that you have heard me."
His voice was filled with confidence and reverence, acknowledging the divine presence and power. Then Jesus shouted in a loud voice, his words echoing through the still air, commanding attention and action.
"Lazarus, come out!"
The command was powerful and filled with life, a call to the impossible, a call to rise and live again. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face.
"Take off the grave clothes and let him go!"
The people who saw this miracle were amazed. Some believed in Jesus right away. They had seen the power of God. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin.
"What are we accomplishing? Here is this man performing many signs, If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation."
Then one of them, named Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, spoke up. "You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish."
He did not say this on his own, but as high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation, and not only for that nation, but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. So from that day on, they plotted to take his life. Therefore, Jesus no longer moved about publicly among the people of Judea. Instead, he withdrew to a region near the wilderness, to a village called Ephraim, where he stayed with his disciples. When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, many went up from the country to Jerusalem for their ceremonial cleansing before the Passover. They kept looking for Jesus, and as they stood in the temple courts, they asked one another,
"What do you think? Isn't he coming to the festival at all?"
But the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that anyone who found out where Jesus was should report it so that they might arrest him.